Senate races, unprecedented turnout. More than 4.5 million people in a January election turning out, more than 70% voting via mail, more than 1 million coming out to the polls. The Republican Party feeling confident going in that they would likely win those races. And it turns out that the two Democratic candidates actually outperformed Joe Biden among key Democratic constituencies, among African Americans, among young people in the suburbs, doing better than expected. And therefore, CBS News projects that both Democrats have won those 2 seats. This is a CBS News special report. I'm Norah O'Donnell. We are coming on the air right now with breaking news because the U.S. Capitol has been placed on lockdown as angry protesters surround the building. We should note that the House and Senate have halted debate on objections to the Electoral College vote, and they have gone into
a message from the president-elect, who issued a challenge to the traitor-in-chief.
I call on President Trump to go on national television now to fulfill his oath and defend the Constitution and demand an end to this siege.
And I saw the images being broadcast around the world, and it breaks my heart. I have 25 grandchildren. Many of them were watching TV, thinking about this building, whether their grandpa was okay. I knew I was okay. I must tell you as well, I was proud to serve with these men and women. This is an extraordinary group of people. I'm proud to be a member of the United States Senate and meet with people of integrity as we do here today. Now we gather due to a selfish man's injured pride and the outrage of supporters who he has deliberately misinformed for the past 2 months and stirred to action this very morning. What happened here today was an insurrection.
Leurs dirigeants décider de leur destin et de leur vie par ce choix libre et démocratique des élections. Et nous ne céderons rien à la violence de quelques-uns qui veulent remettre en cause cela. I just wanted to express our friendship and our faith in the United States. What happened today in Washington, D.C. is not America. Definitely.
Also called for healing after the riot at the Capitol 2 weeks ago.
Being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Say, does that
great privilege to welcome to the inaugural stage the first Latina to ever serve on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the oath of office, followed by musical honors.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
that I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Joseph Robinette Biden, Jr., do solemnly swear.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden, Jr., do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States
office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Madam Speaker, the President of the United States.
Of Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor to present to you the President of the United States.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good to be back. Anyway, thank you all. Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President. No president has ever said those words from this podium. No president has ever said those words. And it's about time.
Americans across 11 states are waking up without power this morning. More than 4 million in Texas alone. That state is seeing, as you said, an historic cold snap. And Marcus Moore is in Dallas with the latest. Good morning, Marcus.
George, good morning. An unbelievable sight still here in Dallas. Look at the roads here, snow and ice packed. And I want you to take a look at this parking lot just behind us. It is covered with ice. I mean, it looks like an ice skating rink. There were rolling blackouts here in Texas, but some people lost power on Monday and it never came back. And the temperatures here are in the single digits. Overnight, historic and dangerous cold taking aim at millions. Power lines and trees collapsing from the weight of freezing rain. In New Jersey, a transformer exploding. A blitz of snow and ice making driving conditions treacherous. Police pleading with people to stay off the roads. In Ohio, tractor trailers and cars lining the road, waiting to be rescued and pulled from the snow. Frozen roads making dangerous conditions for driving in Chicago, where more than 2 feet of lake-effect snow has fallen. And Texans are waking up to some of the coldest temperatures on record.
It's like a walk-in freezer. It's like 34 to 36 degrees.
The cold snap.
We want to send our best wishes from L.A. to those of you who've been hammered by the cold weather. Hundreds of thousands of Texans are still without power. And on a day when the most newsworthy landing should have been the NASA rover successfully touching down on Mars, instead, it was a senator from Texas touching down on Cancun. While his fellow Texans are freezing with the power out, Ted Cruz did what any great leader would do when his state needs leadership most. He booked a flight to Mexico and said, adios, amigos. This is how badly things are being managed in Texas. This road is on the border of Texas and Arkansas. The Arkansas side is cleared. The Texas side is not cleared at all. This is Houston, where Ted Cruz lives. This is inside a house in Houston. There are icicles on the ceiling fans. Toilets are frozen over. Fish tanks are frozen. Just bad news for the fish. People are setting up tents inside their houses to try to stay warm. Others are burning their furniture. One family was burning their toddler's blocks for warmth. And where was Mr. Texas while his constituents are suffering? Well, there he is on a plane. Snake on a plane, right there. Headed.
After nearly a decade sharing power with civilians, Myanmar's military staged a coup, setting up checkpoints, taking over TV stations, which played military propaganda, and detaining civilian officials, including their leader, Aung San Suu Kyi. Once seen as a champion of democracy, a Nobel laureate, Suu Kyi spent nearly 15 years in detention before entering a pact with the military. She was welcomed by President Obama.
Our party always said that the most important thing was national reconciliation and peace.
But Suu Kyi had long fallen from grace, accused of staying silent at what's often called the genocide against Myanmar's Rohingya people.
Suu Kyi made a deal with the military and in the process lost her credibility because of atrocities she refused to recognize. Now, the military ended that deal, and Suu Kyi is back in detention.
Tanzania is in national mourning for the next 2 weeks following the death of President John Magufuli. He was 61 years old. The vice president says Magufuli died Wednesday of heart problems in a hospital in Dar es Salaam. The announcement following speculation that he had been critically ill with COVID-19 during the course of the pandemic. Well, the late president had downplayed its dangers, previously claiming that Tanzania had defeated the virus through prayer.
Logistical nightmare. More than 10% of the world's trade travels through Egypt's Suez Canal, which links Europe and Asia. But since Tuesday, it's been completely blocked after a huge cargo ship ran aground. While there's hope it could be freed sometime this weekend, CBS News correspondent Lucy Kraft, also Elizabeth Palmer, and Deborah Pata report from Tokyo, Tel Aviv, and Cape Town to explain how one vessel's mishap can affect all our lives. We begin with Lucy Kraft in Tokyo.
Good morning. The Suez Canal shutdown has played havoc with a major trade route connecting east and west.
Whether semiconductors and smartphones exported from Southeast China, footwear and apparel made in India, automobiles from Asian factories, and lithium-ion batteries for electric cars from Japan, all of these rely on the Suez Canal. It's also the preferred route for Asia's imports of crude oil and natural gas from the Mideast and Russia. About 19,000 vessels passed through the canal in 2019. That's an average of 50 ships each day.
Behind me is the Mediterranean Sea. It's the normally busy northern gateway to the Suez Canal, but right now shipping is at a standstill. More than 200 vessels are waiting at both ends of the canal for the Ever Given to be cleared out of the way, but she remains stubbornly stuck. Salvage crews have been working round the clock, at the moment concentrating on digging tons of sand out from under the ship's bow and stern. The hope is that a high tide will eventually lift the Ever Given free. The United States has now offered to help the Egyptians free the Ever Given, but until that happens, ships traveling between Asia and the West will have to take the long way round the continent of Africa, 4,000 extra miles.
The detour around the African Cape is lengthy, costly and potentially risky, adding up to 2 weeks to the journey. That's in addition to the hundreds of thousands of dollars in extra fuel costs. But as shipping companies contemplate how to bypass this increasingly expensive traffic jam, they also have to weigh up security concerns. Pirates have long preyed on ships in the waters of the Horn of Africa, but now the seas of oil-rich West Africa are also considered to be among the world's most perilous. In recent months, there's been a surge in kidnappings in the Gulf of Guinea. There's an environmental cost as well. Ships circumnavigating Africa will emit even more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere.
ABC News Special Report. Now reporting, George Stephanopoulos.
Good morning. We're coming on the air right now because we have just learned from Buckingham Palace that Prince Philip, the husband of Queen Elizabeth, has died at the age of 99. A statement from the palace has been made. It is with deep sorrow that Her Majesty the Queen announces the death of her beloved husband, His Royal Highness the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. His Royal Highness passed away peacefully this morning at Windsor Castle. Further announcements will be made in due course.
Has expressed fears of a full-scale war as the deadly conflict between Israeli forces and Palestinians continues for a third day. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned Palestinian militants that this was just the beginning, threatening to strike with blows they haven't dreamed of. Tonight, President Biden said he had spoken to Mr. Netanyahu and said he hoped the violence would end sooner rather than later. At least 65 Palestinians, including 15 children, and 6 Israelis are reported to have been killed since Monday. In the past few days, Palestinian militants have fired a mass barrage of rockets into Israel, including on Tel Aviv. And Israel has carried out a heavy bombardment of Gaza, launching hundreds of airstrikes. Tensions have been growing in Jerusalem, partly fueled by a long-running threat to evict Palestinians from their homes in East Jerusalem. It all came to a head on Friday at Al-Aqsa Mosque. The site where it stands is highly sensitive, sacred for both Muslims and Jews. Israeli police used CS gas and stun grenades at the mosque, and Palestinian youths threw rocks at them. Here's our Middle East correspondent, Tom Bateman.
The world's asking if the region's on the brink of war. People who woke to this feel it's already here. Palestinians in Gaza face the fiercest Israeli bombardment since the last all-out conflict. Israel says it's going after militant leaders. Some were killed in their homes.
Members of the jury, I understand you have a verdict. Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota Plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, Defendant. Verdict, Count 1. Court File Number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. Count 2, guilty. Count 3, guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury foreperson 019. Members of the jury, I'm now going to ask you individually if these are your true and correct verdicts. Please respond yes or no. Juror number 2, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Are these your verdicts, so say you one, so say you all?
Yes.
Members of the jury, I find that the verdicts as read reflect the will of the jury and will be filed accordingly.
Back to CBS This Morning. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is apologizing to Indigenous Canadians after the remains of more than 200 Indigenous children were found last week. Some were as young as 3. Many from Indigenous communities gathered this week to honor the lives lost. The remains were discovered in Kamloops, British Columbia, at what was once Canada's largest residential school for Indigenous children. Our national correspondent, Jerika Duncan, spoke with a survivor. Jerika, good morning.
Good morning. This is such a dark chapter of history for Canada that needs to be told. The Kamloops Indian Residential School in British Columbia used to have at least 51 confirmed deaths on its official record. Well, sadly, one survivor told us he was not surprised to find out at least 215 more students were found buried there.
Sometimes kids would not show up in classroom. They would disappear for the next day, and we knew that they were gone, but we didn't know where they were gone.
Gary Gottfriedson is a survivor of the Kamloops Indian Residential School. He's among the thousands of Indigenous peoples legally mandated by the Canadian government to attend such institutions. They were set up in the late 1800s and often operated by the Catholic Church. The last one closed in 1997. University of Alberta professor Crystal Gale Fraser says abuse was rampant.
The whole point was to erase their Indigenous identities. These Indian residential schools have often been compared to prisons.
We were never allowed to speak our languages in there because of fear of punishment. So those of us that were little were absolutely terrified.
A Truth and Reconciliation Commission was formed to investigate abuse at the Indian residential schools. In 2015, it issued a report saying the government committed cultural genocide. At least 4,000 students died at these schools, some of disease, neglect, accidents, or abuse. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Saying sorry for the tragedies of the past is not enough. It is not enough for the children who died, for the families, or for the survivors and communities.
Benjamin Netanyahu is out as Israeli Prime Minister. This was the moment a short time ago when 12 consecutive years as Prime Minister for Benjamin Netanyahu ended. A coalition of smaller parties joined forces against Netanyahu and, as expected, voted him out by a razor-thin margin on the streets of Jerusalem. There were late-night celebrations after the vote, ushering in the post-Netanyahu era.
Just into CNN, we have the first images, the first photographs of the scene following this bombing here. Please take a moment here, because I do want to warn you, they're disturbing, as you might expect. So take that moment, and we're going to show some of them now. These some of the casualties, civilian casualties, it seems, taken away in wheelbarrows.
President Biden says despite the attacks, the U.S. mission will go on until Tuesday's deadline for withdrawal. Ed O'Keefe is at the White House, where the president spoke to Americans about the bombings. Ed, good morning.
Good morning, Vlad. The president says he takes responsibility for what's transpired in recent days. And while there's no word yet on how the U.S. will respond, the president made clear the U.S. will retaliate.
We will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down and make you pay.
Just hours ago, the last American troops left Afghanistan as the first round of troops found it nearly 20 years ago, with the Taliban in charge.
To South Korea's military, which says Pyongyang has fired at least one ballistic missile from its east coast into the Sea of Japan. The missile was apparently launched from a submarine based in the port of Sinpo. It comes as intelligence envoys from the US, from South Korea and Japan all gather in Seoul. Well, North Korea has embarked on a series of missile tests recently in defiance of international sanctions. The US envoy to North Korea, Sung Kim, has reiterated that the United States is open to meeting North Korea without preconditions.
Attempt is taking place in Sudan. The Armed Forces Ministry has said in a statement that the army has detained the civilian Prime Minister, Abdullah Hamdok, and taken him to an unidentified location. Social media shows images of several cabinet ministers from the transitional government, the Sovereign Council, being arrested. Internet links have been cut.
Can you repair a link?
Change his behavior, Mr. President.
Yeah, I'm not confident in changing behavior. What do you do all the time? So when did I say I was confident?
You said in the next 6 months you'll be able to determine.
What I said was, let's get it straight. I said what will change their behavior is if the rest of the world reacts to them and it diminishes their standing in the world. I'm not confident of anything. I'm just stating the fact.
But given his past behavior has not changed, and in that press conference after sitting down with you for several hours, he denied any involvement in cyber attacks. He downplayed human rights abuses. He even refused to say Alexei Navalny's name. So how does that account to a constructive meeting as President Putin?
You don't understand that. You're in the wrong business. I owe my last question an apology. I shouldn't have been such a wise guy with the last answer I gave. Anyway, thanks for being here. And I owe my...
For nearly 2 decades, Germany has been led by just one person. But today, she said her final Auf Wiedersehen.
She is arguably the most powerful woman in the world. But now, after 16 years at the helm of one of the world's largest economies, Angela Merkel is leaving Germany's highest office. And the stakes couldn't be higher. Who will provide the stability and economic success she has overseen?
You know who really finds it hard to imagine German politics after this election? Generation Merkel. Germans who've never known another prime minister their whole young lives.
They call her Mutti or Mom. Now, as Mutti is leaving the Chancellery, Germany is out of its comfort zone.
She leaves by choice, still enjoying a remarkable 70% approval rating.
As her 16-year tenure as Chancellor comes to a close, Germany celebrated her time in office with a traditional military ceremony.
Yo, Germany, what the Yo, am I the only one who picked up the Nazi vibes there? The torches and shit? Yo, you guys better stop before you reach Poland. We're watching you. You guys just casually like, we do this all the time. No, you don't.
New satellite images tonight show Russian forces at the ready near the Ukrainian border. U.S. intelligence warned Russia's Vladimir Putin may be planning an attack on the U.S. ally. U.S. and Ukrainian officials estimate there are already 70 to 100,000 Russian troops near the border. An unclassified U.S. intelligence estimate predicts another 100,000 could be called in for a potential invasion early next year. President Biden has signaled to Putin the U.S. will oppose him.
I have been in constant contact.
We have some terrible breaking news to share on this final day of 2021. Comedian and American icon Betty White has died, just days short of her 100th birthday. CNN has not yet learned a cause of her death, but her life remarkable and vibrant to the very end. CNN's Stephanie Elam has this remembrance.
It's a good day. How can anything go wrong if it's a good day from morning till night?
Betty White's cheerful Hollywood career began in her teens, and by her 20s, she was a fixture on television with her own daily talk show. Ahead of the times, White co-founded her own production company in 1952. She worked on a variety of television and film projects over the years before turning a 1973 guest appearance on The Mary Tyler Moore Show into a permanent role. White was a scene stealer as the man-hungry Sue Ann Nivens.
I think a man should be virile and macho and just reeking with masculinity.
Her second signature role was on the beloved series The Golden Girls as the comical Rose Nyland.
And they attack chickens. I don't care about chickens, Rose. She didn't call me chicken. She called me peacock. You look more like a chicken when you're angry. Your neck sticks out.
With the Golden Girls, I got to play with those silly ladies every week, and I loved Rose Nyland. She was positive, and she wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer, but she wasn't dumb. She was just terminally naive.
Off-screen, White married 3 times. She called her third husband, TV host Alan Ludden, the love of her life. They were together almost 20 years before Ledin died of stomach cancer in 1981.
Now to Colorado, and wildfires that destroyed as many as 1,000 homes and forced tens of thousands to evacuate. Satellite images show a housing development in the town of Superior. More than 100 homes were reduced to ash. Marissa Armas from our CBS Denver station KCNC is on the scene in Louisville, Colorado.
A combination of hurricane-force winds and wildfires left a trail of devastation across parts of Boulder County, Colorado. Wind gusts of more than 100 miles per hour fueled the flames, destroying everything in its path, including nearly 1,000 homes.
There's ashes in the sky and fire in the ground. So pretty scary.
A scary scene at this Costco store shows shoppers evacuating into the store's parking lot engulfed in smoke.
Go straight, go straight.
I can't get this door open. Inside this Chuck E. Cheese, panicked parents and children rush for the exits as large clouds of smoke rush in, but struggle for a few seconds to get the doors opened due to the strong winds.
Go, 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 go.
They eventually made it out.
God help us.
This Colorado driver narrowly avoided running straight into flames on a highway.